Hi guys, my name is Juan, I'm just one reader, and welcome back to another recent reads video. These past couple of weeks have been kind of weird for me in terms of reading because I just have had a lot of work, and so I've decided to read differently. I have chosen one middle grade, one adult fiction novel, preferably literary fiction, and one short story collection to read simultaneously at the same time. I just found that this combination works very well for me because depending on the time of day or the moment that I have available during the day, or if it's the weekend and I can read a little bit more, depending on all those things, I can decide what to read and what to pick up, and I can slowly but surely make my way through all those three books. So this wrap up is gonna be a bit different. I'm gonna tell you the four books that I actually finished. So these are books numbers 7 through 10 that I have read thus far in 2017. But I will also tell you the short stories that I've read from the collection that I chose and what I have read so far from the literary fiction novel that I have chosen. So the first book that I actually finished was book 5 in a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket or Daniel Handler. This one is The Austere Academy. This one has to be my favorite in the series so far. I loved the plot, I loved the absurdity, I loved learning all the things, the little like literary bits and pieces that Lemony Snicket throws in there along the story. I also really enjoyed the academic setting, the entire school environment, the bizarre teachers and classes that the Baudelaire orphans have. I loved reading this one. It was such a blast, and I have given it my highest rating for a book in this series, which was a 3.75 or something, which is almost like a 4, but I feel like if I give a book of this genre, of this category, a 4 stars rating, that means it's amazing. And this one is my favorite in the series, but I still feel like I can still be more impressed. Then after that, I continued with book number 6 in the series, which is The Ersatz Elevator. I also really enjoyed this one. Maybe not as much as The Austere Academy, but this one also has a very interesting plot, very nice characters, and by nice, I mean very bizarre, absurd, hilarious, and ridiculous characters that you love and hate. And I loved that the setting and the entire tone of this book, this particular installment in the series, felt very much like Manhattan, like the something from the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It felt very pretentious and glamorous and fancy. There's a lot of talk here about what's in and what's out, and it's all the tendencies and fashion and being cool. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it like a 3.5 or something like that. Then I decided I wanted to pick up something slightly different, just ever so slightly different, and I went for a children's picture book. This one is The Blue Aspic by Edward Gorey. This is actually the book that Lemony Snicket, well, Daniel Handler, who is the real person behind Lemony Snicket, got obsessed with when he was growing up. This was one of his favorite books, and he said in an interview that The Blue Aspic was a book that he used to read when he was growing up and that just deeply unsettled him and influenced him and inspired him. So I decided to pick it up. It's a picture book, so you can read it in about 5-10 minutes. It has a lot of images, a lot of illustrations. They are beautiful illustrations, kind of gothic. They have this kind of weird, dark... Oh, no, that's a spoiler. It has like this kind of angry, dark, gothic feel to them. I really like it. That's black and white. It's about this opera singer who, well, something tragic happens. And I love opera and I love dark gothic weird stuff. So this was very enjoyable. There's very little text in this book. Like every image is accompanied by just one or two sentences. So it's a very simple story. It's just plain and simple, but I really enjoyed it. My only problem with it is that I would have enjoyed it more had I been younger, much younger. I mean, like 10 years old. And I think this one is a great picture book for children or for people that are working with children. This is a book that I want to teach to some of my students. My students are 11 and 12 years old, so I think some of them might still be able to really enjoy this one. I gave it 3 stars because I really liked the quality of the book, but it didn't have the enjoyment factor for me personally. And then after that, the last book that I actually finished in this part of the year was book 7 in a series of unfortunate events. More series of unfortunate events, I know, by Lemony Snicket, and this is The Vile Village. I enjoyed this one. I liked it, but it kind of reminded me of the issues that I had with book 4, The Miserable Meal, although I did enjoy this one a lot more than The Miserable Meal. I just didn't really like that one that much. This one is similar to book 4 in the tone and maybe a little bit in the setting, or the way that the setting comes across as very dry and solitary and desolate. I enjoyed the mystery aspect of this book. The plot itself was kind of slow. I found this book to be very slow paced at the beginning, particularly. It was very slow and repetitive, but then it picked up and I really enjoyed the ending. Chapter 13, which is the last one, all of the books in the series have 13 chapters because, 13 is bad luck. So chapter 13 in here was particularly suspenseful. It was just so action-packed. It had a huge cliffhanger. It was so frustrating. It had one of those moments where you're like, no, don't do that to me. It left me hanging there for the next installment. But the rest of the book was kind of so-so, so I'm giving it 3 stars, but I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series, but I think I'm gonna maybe take a break for like a month, and then I'm gonna pick up book 8, which is The Hostile Hospital, if I'm not mistaken. So like I mentioned, I have been reading a novel and a short story collection alongside the middle grades that I've been reading. So I want to talk briefly about the short stories that I've been reading. I decided to choose this collection first. This is the Best American Short Stories by edited by Jennifer Egan. This is the 2014 edition. I'm reading it in the order that is as they appear in here. And I am loving this collection so far. It is very literary. There's a lot of weird fiction in here. Like, maybe not weird, like magical realism weird, but there are some things in here that feel like almost like George Saunders-y. So I want to tell you briefly the stories that I've read so far. Let me find the index. There it is. So the first story is called Charity. It's by Charles Baxter, and this is one of my favorites so far. I loved it. I really loved it. Then the second story is called The Indian Uprising by Ann Beattie, and I also really enjoyed it, but it was kind of too short for my opinion. I kind of wanted more, but I really enjoyed it. Then the third story is very thought-provoking. It's The Night of the Satellite by T.C. Boyle. And I really think I'm going to read this story again because it really kept me going. It kept me thinking for a long time after I'd finished reading it. I'm not sure I really got it, so I want to read it again. And T.C. Boyle is an author that I really want to read more from. Then the next story that I read was After the Flood by Peter Cameron, which might be my favorite story in the collection so far. It has been, in my opinion, the most literary and the most character-driven. And I really love the way that he showed us who these characters are and how these characters felt by showing us some very little specific details of their lives. I really enjoyed that observation quality. And then the last story that I've read from here was Tong, Long Tom, yeah, Long Tom Lookout by Nicole Cullen. I really enjoyed this one. It's maybe not as memorable as the others have been so far, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I'm really enjoying this collection, and I'm looking forward to continuing on and finishing. Right now, I'm like 1/3 into the collection, so I'm gonna probably finish this in about 2 or 3 months, depending on how much I actually pick it up. And then the adult fiction novel, which, like I said, I really would prefer it if it is a literary fiction novel that I chose, is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. This is a book that has been greatly recommended to me. I actually asked you guys to recommend me or tell me from my current TBR which book would you enjoy, or would you enjoy seeing me review, or which book from my TBR do you think that I would enjoy the most. And most of you surprisingly said Middlesex. So I decided to pick it up, and I read the first chapter, and I immediately, after reading that chapter, realized two things. Firstly, that this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. It's that great. Secondly, that this is a book that I will take in very small doses. I will read this book in about 3 months. It's an epic family saga. It's nothing short of a masterpiece or a master work man, I'm loving it. My only problem with it, and this is also why I'm taking it in small doses, is that sometimes it feels quite heavy, sometimes it feels dense and very detailed in terms of description, history, politics, some social issues. I am not American, so it's kind of hard for me to really understand and relate to everything that is happening in this part of American history. I'm very ignorant when it comes to American history, honestly, but I'm really enjoying everything else. I mean, this is so far almost a 5-star read, maybe not a 5-star read, but very, very high, and I'm really hoping to continue that with this one. This won the Pulitzer Prize. I don't know when, but it did. And I also have The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. So please let me know what's your opinion on Middlesex. Do you feel the way that I'm feeling? Like, it's almost perfect, but sometimes it's too dense and too almost boring. I don't want to say boring, but sometimes it does feel like very heavy. And I read, it takes me like 1 hour to read a chapter from this because I want to really take everything in and really pay attention. So if you have read this, I would really much appreciate any tips, suggestions, or really any comments on it, on your experience. I would love it if we could have a conversation about this. That was my reading wrap up for today. I hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below. I love talking to you guys in the comments down below. I am just one reader. I will see you next time.